It's Friday, it's the 18th of July. I'm Moon Gon-young. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. A Malaysian airliner crashes in eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 people on board. The United States believes a surface-to-air missile brought down the passenger flight. North Korea threatens to review its decision to enter the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea, a day after talks over their participation break down. And Korea says it'll scrap rice import caps starting next year, opening its market for the staple grain to foreign competition for the very first time. The ramifications and opposition, we'll find that out. But first, let us begin with another tragedy. Now, the world is still trying to figure out what caused a Malaysia Airlines passenger plane carrying 298 people was shot down over eastern Ukraine and killed everyone on board. Pro-Russian separatists are suspected of the missile attack, which Ukraine has branded an act of terrorism. First, here's our Kim Hyun-bin.
The Malaysian Airlines aircraft, a Boeing 777, was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it fell near the city of Donetsk, a restive area close to the Russian border, which has become a stronghold for pro-Russian rebels. Ukraine's Interior Ministry advisor says the plane, which was flying at 33,000 feet, was brought down by a ground-to-air missile. Both the Ukrainian government and the pro-Russian separatist rebels immediately blamed each other for the crash.
We do not exclude the possibility that this plane was also shot down and stressed that Ukrainian armed forces did not perform any actions to fire at targets in the air.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is blaming the Ukrainian government for the crash, saying that Kiev bears some responsibility for the fighting that may have led to the jet's apparent downing by missile. The U.S. government says it will offer any assistance necessary to Ukraine to determine the cause of the crash.
I offered President Poroshenko the help of our expertise, our National Transportation Safety Group and other experts in the community. He accepted that help, and they will be on their way rapidly to see if we can get to the bottom of this.
More than half of those on board were Dutch nationals. There were also 27 Australians, 23 Malaysians, 11 Indonesians, and various other nationalities. More than 40 remain unverified. Korea's foreign ministry says it's unlikely any Korean passengers were on the plane. Other airlines have announced they are now diverting flights around eastern Ukraine. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
So with that accident, in less than 5 months' time, Malaysia Airlines has been faced with two huge disasters. Flight 370, which vanished from radar in March, still remains missing to this day, with more questions than answers about its ultimate fate. And now, the downing of Flight 17 with nearly 300 people on board. Our Kim Min-ji reports on the recent tragedies and another from more than 30 years ago that is eerily reminiscent.
Mystery still surrounds Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 that went missing back in March, with still no sign of any wreckage or the 239 people who were on board. The Boeing jetliner en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing is believed to have crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Despite massive international search efforts, the accident still remains unsolved, and investigators appear no closer to determining what happened to the plane than they were 4 months ago. And now another tragedy involving a Malaysia Airlines flight, this one shot down, killing everyone on board. Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak says the attack was a shock and ordered an immediate investigation. In the span of less than 5 months, some 530 people have been killed while flying on Malaysia Airlines planes. It puts the future of the company in question. The crisis also brings to mind a similar attack from 3 decades earlier. In September 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007, bound for Seoul from New York, was shot down by a Soviet fighter plane, killing all 269 people on board. The attack came during the peak of the Cold War and further heightened tensions between the West and the Soviet Union. The Korean airliner was shot down after being mistaken as a reconnaissance plane. The downing of the Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 and the deaths of nearly 300 innocent lives appears to also be the result of tensions between states. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now let's shift our focus to the Korean Peninsula. Working-level talks to discuss the details of North Korea's participation in the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea ended Thursday, yesterday that is, when the North Korean delegation stormed out of the room. On this Friday, the North accuses South of acting in bad faith. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea threatened Friday to reconsider its decision to participate in the upcoming Incheon Asian Games, pinning the failure of Thursday's working-level talks squarely on the South. Through its state-run Korean Central News Agency Friday, the North criticized the South Korean delegation for what it called an insincere attitude in the latter half of the meeting, claiming it came under the directive of the presidential office of Cheongwade. It accused the South of taking issue with the number of North Korean cheerleaders and the size of the North Korean flag that would be used during the Games. Should Seoul maintain such a stance, Pyongyang threatened to reconsider its plans to participate in the sporting event. South Korea's Unification Ministry expressed deep regrets about North Korea's angry outburst and called for Pyongyang to return to talks with sincerity. The two Koreas met at the border village of Panmunjom on Thursday to discuss the details of the 700 North Korean athletes and cheerleaders that were planning to make the trip south for the Incheon Asian Games, which begin in September. But when South Korea asked for more details on its plans and said it would accommodate the North Korean delegation just as it would any other team that's participating in the Games, North Korea walked away, questioning Seoul's motives. The two sides have not set a date for their next meeting. While some experts had hoped the Asian Games could become a platform for improved inter-Korean ties, Thursday's meeting shows that the two sides still remain far apart. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, over in New York, the United Nations Security Council has denounced North Korea's recent series of short-range ballistic missile tests. Officials say the fact that the Security Council has even addressed the issue shows how seriously the global community views the situation. Here's our Choi Yoo-sun.
Following a closed-door meeting on Thursday, the United Nations Security Council called on North Korea to stop its recent series of short-range ballistic missile tests.
The members of the Security Council condemned these launches as violations of Security Council resolutions 1718 in 2006, 1874, 2009, 2087, 2013, and 2094, 2013, and urged the DPRK to fully comply with the relevant Security Council resolutions.
The Council's condemnation comes after Pyongyang launched 3 rounds of Scud short-range ballistic missiles between June 29th and July 13th toward the East Sea of the Korean Peninsula. For conducting 3 nuclear tests and repeatedly testing its short to long-range ballistic missiles since 2006, North Korea has been banned by the UN from any type of ballistic missile or nuclear-related activity. The Council had previously released a statement denouncing the North's medium-range Nodong missile launch in March. South Korean officials say it's very unusual for the Security Council to discuss the regime's short-range missile testing.
It's meaningful that the Council and not the North Korea Sanctions Committee discussed the issue after recognizing that the frequent short-range missiles on the Korean Peninsula were threatening international peace and security.
Pyongyang is expected to protest the latest statement out of the United Nations. In response to the statement in March, North Korea threatened to carry out what it called a new form of nuclear test. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, staying in the UN body, the UN Human Rights Committee has lambasted Japan for not taking more responsibility for its past atrocities. Now, the committee, during its regular 2-day review of Japan's human rights situation, said that the Japanese government had not gone far enough in apologizing for its sexual enslavement of women before and during World War II. The UN committee also said the female victims should be called enforced sex slaves instead of using what it called the rather vague term of comfort women. The recommendation, analysts say, implies that the committee acknowledges the need for a clearer term for the victims to show that they were forced into wartime brothels by the Japanese military.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks. Now, after 20 long years of controversies, the Korean government has announced that it will liberalize the nation's rice market starting next year. It was a decision that came after much deliberation and, of course, has been met with fierce resistance from farmers' unions within the country. Here's our Hwang Ji-hye with the details.
Korea will open its rice market next year. Agriculture Minister Lee Dong-pil said Friday that it's simply too costly to import more rice, which was the trade-off for postponing rice market liberalization. Korea promised to open up its rice market under a 1994 agreement with the World Trade Organization. But because rice is a Korean staple food, the country was allowed to push back the date for 20 years in exchange for gradually raising its rice import quota. That extension is set to expire at the end of this year. The minister set the import quota of over 400,000 tons this year, which makes up nearly 10% of the nation's total rice consumption, is a heavy burden on the nation's overall rice market, especially as rice consumption continues to drop in Korea. If the government were to ask the WTO for another delay, the import quota would likely double next year. While the government says it will protect the nation's rice market by imposing high tariffs on foreign rice, it did not provide specific numbers. Pundits are expecting the tariff rate to fall at around 400%. They say that level of tariff will ensure Korean rice maintains its price competitiveness against Chinese or American rice, which can cost half the price or even lower. Outside from where the government made the announcement, a massive protest led by Korean farmers was held. They said they intended to protect the nation's food sovereignty that the government seems to have handed away. The government plans to set the nation's tariff rate on rice and get it verified by the WTO by this September. It also laid out plans to support the nation's rice industry through insurance programs meant to stabilize rural household incomes. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, South Korea and China are making slow but steady progress in bilateral free trade talks. Their 12th round of negotiations have just wrapped up in the Korean city of Daegu, with Korea's trade ministry saying that the two sides reached an agreement in principle on market liberalization in the service and investment sectors. Now, significant inroads were also made in the areas of online commerce and cooperation. As for the sensitive agriculture industry, the two sides are still trying to narrow their differences. Now, Seoul wants as many agricultural products as possible included in the extremely sensitive items list to protect the market from an influx of cheap Chinese products. The next round of negotiations is set for September in China. Now, in summit talks in Seoul earlier this month, Presidents Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping agreed to finalize the bilateral trade pact by the end of this year. Uncharted path. Now, that's how South Korea's new finance minister is describing the road down for this economy in relation to the challenges that the economy is facing. In his first economic ministerial meeting since taking office, Choi Kyung-hwan said there was an urgent need for comprehensive and aggressive measures to address lingering problems like slumping household income and sluggish investment, and all that due to a lack of entrepreneurship. Che added that the economy is recovering at a much weaker pace than expected and that the momentum could wane at any moment. Now, shifting our focus, another body was recovered from the sunken Sewol ferry early this morning. The government's disaster response team says divers found the body inside the cafeteria of the vessel at around 6:20 a.m. Korea time. The body is presumed to be that of a woman in her 50s who was a cook on that ill-fated ship. Now, this marks the first body recovered from the Sewol ferry in over 3 weeks. Officials say they'll continue all-out efforts to find the 10 remaining bodies as the tidal currents have begun to slow down. The finding raises the confirmed death toll from this April's ferry disaster to 294. Well, now many of our viewers will have heard of pororo and or larva. But if you haven't, you will soon, as Korea's most popular animated cartoon characters are winning over countless young fans around the world and are taking home plenty of awards to boot. And riding on this wave, Korea has pulled out all the stops for its largest character fair currently underway in southern Seoul. So for all these cute characters and fun features, here's our Park Ji-won.
This adorable feline character is one of the most popular emoticons on Korea's mobile messaging application KakaoTalk. It's been downloaded more than 1 million times since it was first introduced in 2012. If cats aren't your thing, how about a sleep-loving sloth? This sloth character embodies the slow life that some of us might miss in this busy modern society we live in. It would be remiss if we didn't mention pororo, perhaps the most widely recognizable Korean character worldwide. The children's animation has been exported to some 130 countries since it debuted in the early 2000s. Following in the lovable penguin's tracks is Larva, another successful character that now has a presence in 105 countries.
It doesn't have any language, it doesn't have any dialogue. It's a simple slapstick comedy that everybody easy to understand, so I think that's the main reason.
From instant messenger emoticons to healing icons, Korea's character industry is expanding rapidly. In just 6 years, the export volume of Korean characters has more than doubled, and from 2010 to 2012, the export volume grew at an average growth rate over 22% every year.
Well, I've been visiting Korea since the early 1990s in the licensing business. I've really seen the industry grow and become a very mature, and it's really grown to world-class level. Particularly with a lot of the innovative properties.
I think there's definitely a maturing of the licensing market here. People are more aware of the value of an effective strategic licensing program, how it could help create more awareness for their brand or their character, and how it could also help them create a significant revenue stream.
All these characters and many others can be found at the Seoul Character and Licensing Fair being held at COEX through this Sunday. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Well, it's Friday, and you know what that means. It's our Real Talk or Cinema section. The heat and humidity turned up this week, and the loud cicadas are back, which can only mean one thing for film fans in Korea. It's time for PFAN. Well, the Busan International Fantastic Film Festival kicked off last night for its packed 18th edition, which will run until the 27th. And joining the festivities and connecting with us live from PFAN himself is our very own film critic, Piers Conran. Hello there, Piers. Piers? Are we having some technical problems?
Hi there. Hi, how are you?
Hi, we seem to be having a little bit of a technical glitch, so we're looking to fix that problem very soon. But of course, our film critic, Piers Conran, is joining us live via Skype from the venue of PFAN in Busan, Gyeonggi-do Province. Now, how are we doing with the technical connection? All right, it looks like we are having some technical problems connecting with our film critic, Piers Conran, who was supposed to speak to us about the Busan International Fantastic Film Festival, which of course kicked off yesterday and will run until the 27th. Well, PFAN, we were going to say, is that it's Asia's largest ever ever genre film festival in Asia, and of course it'll feature stories and films like sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and different genres. And this year we were looking to see various kinds of events also happening, including the Latin America film showcase. And this is running from July 17th until 27th, so 11-day run. And we will have our Piers Conran back whenever we can, whenever this technical problem is resolved. But so that was our Piers Conran, and we will have that back for you.
Good afternoon and happy Friday for everyone. The rain has taken a break and bright sunshine has replaced it and have nation's capital. However, there are still regions such as the Chungcheondo and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces where heavy rain advisory are still in effect. Now, the rain showers are expected to come to a stop today but will return over the weekend. But until then, we can expect a cooler Friday compared to yesterday, with temperatures into the mid-20s to the high 20s. Now going over to our temperature readings. Seoul will top out at 28 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to both at 27 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 28, Dokdo at 27, while Mankungang tops to 33. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Well, we'd like to apologize for the technical glitch that we experienced when connecting with our film critic, Piers Conran, who is at the venue of the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival. And as it is in the 18th year, and as it is Asia's largest, there are a lot of films and fun events that you could all enjoy until the 27th of this month. So hopefully we'll be able to bring you more on that in, if not later newscasts, some other day next week. But we do apologize for that technical glitch, and that's just about all from me at this hour. I'm Moon Gon-young, and I'll be back with you at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today, during which we will discuss Korea's liberalization of the rice market, a very sensitive issue that had been postponed for 20 years. And today, the government announced that it will open up its rice market for global competition, and that will be the key of our Business Today at 4 p.m. I'll see you then.